Welcome to another episode of the Wall Street Bets podcast, where we talk about decentralized finance and democratizing DeFi to make it more accessible to everyone. I'm Venus DeMille, and today we'll be joined by Mirror Protocol's Brian Curran and Stanford Lee. The top market news today is shocking, not shocking. U.S. banks charged low-income Americans $12.4 billion in overdraft fees in 2020. Visa bypassed Bitcoin entirely and entered the market with an acquisition of a CryptoPunk for $150,000, which they should definitely give that marketing person a raise. And to distill this into a simple observation, Cardano continues to have the most robust public relations company of all time. We'd like to focus today's episode on one of our key value props at WSBDApp project, which is our single cent stock swap, which is a partnership with Mirror and features mAssets from Terraform Labs. We are going to bring in Brian and Stanford. Welcome, guys. And Mirror Protocol is a mirrored asset project developed and launched by Terra Labs, the blockchain development company behind Luna, Anchor Protocol, and UST. mAssets are blockchain tokens that behave like mirror version of real-world assets by reflecting the exchange prices on chain. Welcome, Stanford and Brian. Stanford is the project manager for Mirror Protocol. Brian is the head of comms for Terraform Labs and writes some of the more articulate and clear articles about Terraform's role in DeFi that I've ever read. Welcome, guys.
Hey, glad to be here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Brian, where are you joining us from?
Los Angeles, where it's very hot.
It's very hot. It's very hot. I'm feeling the same thing. And Stanford, where are you joining us from?
Actually hailing from South Korea.
South Korea, amazing. And this is where Terraform Labs is headquartered, correct?
Yes, correct.
Amazing. And how big are the teams that you have there?
Yeah, so Terraform Labs consists mainly of product folks, but I think there's about 25 or to 30 developers, and we're actively hiring a lot more developers as well. And then about 15 or so product folks. So, either people in research or in some back-end office functions.
Amazing. And how's the climate of crypto in South Korea right now? It's obviously a country known for a lot of tech innovation, but how is this being received both in the local community and also, government, et cetera?
Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about government. So crypto is not currently taxed in South Korea, but legislation is about to start next year. So it's a little bit similar to like the environment in the States, where there's a little bit more of a crackdown on just random crypto trading and things like that. With regards to usage, it's a little bit more popular than, for example, the States. So like I'll be on the subway or something in South Korea, and I'll see like an old woman who's like in her 70s or 60s or 70s, like trading crypto on like a crypto exchange. So it's a lot easier in Korea. It's a lot easier for users to, for example, connect their bank account and then directly deposit money. It's like a 2-minute process. So a little bit, I guess, higher ease of access within South Korea than, for example, at some other places.
Wow. And you've spent some time in the States as well.
Yes, I went to school in the States. Yeah, college in the States.
Yes, I think that's a modest acknowledgement of what I understand to be quite a brilliant mind that's behind a lot of this product development.
Try not to hype you up too much.
I got the full background. And you also have Chai payment systems in South Korea. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And is that part of the onboarding fiat on-ramp to crypto?
So it's a little bit different. So you can think of Chai payments as something like, for example, Apple Pay or like Samsung Pay.
Okay.
Where users can connect their bank accounts with Chai, and then Chai handles all the back end with, converting from fiat to crypto. And then users are able to connect their banks there and then use in whichever places are supported.
Wow.
Around South Korea. Yep.
And is that something that's going to go global at some point, or is it something that's distinctly geared towards the local market?
Yeah, so Chai now is currently operating as like slightly a separate entity. So they have like a lot of their own teams. And I know they are expanding currently to Southeastern Asia. So for example, places in like Singapore, they've already been partnering with some of the largest merchants there. And I think they're also looking to expand elsewhere.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, it sounds like a really exciting place to be in this moment.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And Brian, you're in Huntington Beach, which is not far from me. Tell me comparatively how you feel the climate is in Southern California when it comes to attitudes around crypto.
Well, we definitely don't have old ladies on the tram trading crypto. There's a little bit more of a learning curve for a lot of people who are kind of hesitant to approach crypto. Obviously, it can be complicated in certain instances. So, the goal for the U.S. and especially like appealing to regulators is just kind of, provide them resources and informative material that will help ease that burden. And I mean, even looking in the last 2-3 years, like we've already come a long way in kind of lowering that barrier to entry. But we still have a long way to go. But yeah, I think, as Stanford mentioned, crypto in Southeast Asia and especially South Korea is a little bit more popular. And, chai, like 5% of Koreans use it, and it settles over 2 billion in transaction volume a year. So hopefully, we can see that same kind of traction in the US soon.
Amazing. I agree. I'm hopeful for it. It feels like it really depends kind of, like what state you're in and what party you're at in terms of what response you get to it here. And in terms of just the general public sentiment, I find.
Yeah, just stay away from New York, apparently.
Well, speaking of New York, the crazy thing is I was introduced to crypto in 2014, I want to say, by Mike Novogratz when he was still at Fortress, and he had just become completely obsessed with it and, couldn't say enough promising things. And regrettably, it took me a while to catch on to the fact that this was a real thing that mattered. But when I saw in in February that Galaxy was investing in Terraform Labs and in these products, Luna, Mirror, Anchor, et cetera, that was when I kind of switched on and said, I kind of missed this the first time around, and I don't want to miss it. And I really trust this person's instincts. And if he's going in with the level of capital he's going in with, then I think this is something to really understand and pay attention to. And have since found that there is a really, really robust and kind of, I know that on the Luna side, they call them lunatics, but you guys have a very, very deep and passionate fan base for your products, which I hadn't understood until that moment, just what the true sort of necessity of community was and what the true value of community was in crypto, which is obviously very different from the stock market in that regard.
Yeah, so Mike's definitely a full-on lunatic at this point. But in crypto, communities are extremely valuable. They provide a lot of things. Number one, being so close to them, we can take their feedback and incorporate it into product decisions really quickly, a lot faster than your traditional company. Because a lot of the people in the community are invested in the network and just like being part of something special in a certain project that they see. And then two, a lot of these people that spend the time in Telegram or just following a certain project they're all over the globe, and B, they have day jobs. So a lot of them have talents that are very useful, and we come across it all the time where someone in the community creates something awesome, whether it's a product tool or some content. So our goal for growing the ecosystem is just provide as many opportunities for community members to kind of catalyze those talents, because there are so many there that are talented and willing to participate. So I think crypto is very special in that regard. And then with Wall Street Bets, obviously there's this huge community, and that kind of manifested on mainstream front pages with GameStop and everything. So, trying to merge the two and show them, how powerful communities can be within crypto is, something that we think could really go a long way.
That's amazing. I love the symmetry there too, because it is true. They seem on the face like very different kinds of projects and with different aims, but when you kind of come down to it, there is this synthesis of the traditional financial markets and stocks and people who have been attracted to those perhaps, but also, accessing those through crypto and DeFi, which has a much sort of not just a greater upside in most scenarios, but just a completely different sort of financial model in terms of what benefits are available to the average consumer, whether that's leverage, whether that's, certain yields, which, I know Anchor does an amazing job with. I understand with Mirror, there's, multifaceted ways of trading these assets within the platform, and that you guys are also moving towards a version 3, which I'd love to know more about if you're happy to share that.
Yeah, so I think Stanford could speak more about, version 3 and some of the technical aspects of Mirror as a product manager. But, the gateway for people like in Wall Street Bets communities to crypto is obviously stocks, and they follow the equity markets very closely. So, allowing synthetic exposure to equities can potentially be a large gateway for onboarding users to crypto that may not understand the underlying mechanics of how it works. But the idea is to abstract away that complexity and make it easy enough where it's the same as trading stocks on Robinhood. So Mirror, initially the use cases for people like Southeast Asia, Africa, South America, or where they don't have access to U.S. equity markets, right? So not necessarily someone in the U.S. has to use Mirror because they have Robinhood, but for most of the global user set, like they don't have access to those markets. So it's really about unlocking the kind of waiting capital for people to participate in those markets, and then eventually, getting Mirror to the point where it is, in terms of features and user interface, rivaling, apps like Robinhood.
Yeah, amazing. And Stanford, I'd love to hear from your point of view as well on the product development that's gone into V3.
Yeah, so we've been actively working on several new features, some that I can't exactly say, but some other ones that we've been looking very closely into. So I guess Terraform Labs as a company, as well as like the Mirror team as well, has been actively following like various DeFi scenes, both in Terra as well as in um, Ethereum as well, where a lot of the major developments are being made. So we do plan to, for example, reduce the amount of slippage that occurs in various trades on Mirror by implementing some of the new models, for example, Uniswap V3 or some of the curve-like models as well. A few other things that we're also taking some inspiration from is revamping our governance structure as to reward users, for example, that are longer-term users in Mirror, willing to stake Mirror for longer periods of time. So we're looking at models like, for example, that is currently employed on Curve. So we think in general, like our team, some of the current mechanics used in the Ethereum space are very well thought out and very well developed. So we're looking to make slight modifications on that and then apply it to Mirror. And then I guess lastly, for one of the big things that we want to do is so Uniswap V3, while it reduces a lot of the slippage that happens in trades, I think one of the things that makes it a little bit difficult for users is that they have to constantly readjust their liquidity positions. So what your team is planning to do is to build something on top of this, let's say DEX, have the protocol itself automatically balance these positions for you.
Amazing. Can you, because slippage is a funny thing, and I think it's one of the first, not just like terms, but mechanics that can sometimes trip up a new user coming into these DEXs. It's on top of having to figure out all the things you have to figure out. Suddenly you're hit with this thing called slippage. Can you describe in just the simplest terms what slippage is and why it changes based on what you're trying to buy?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I don't know if I'm the best person to explain this, but on Uniswap, you'll have certain pool pairs or any type of DEX, and they consist of two assets. Let's say, for example, in Mirror, it's Apple and UST. And let's say on both sides, there's like $1 million worth of liquidity. If you make a trade that's relatively large to this pool size, your prices will start to go up. So you can kind of think of it as similar to like ordering on a traditional order book. So as you start buying more units, like you start going up the order book, and the price that you originally see versus like the price that you actually transact, that difference is what is called the slippage.
Amazing. Yeah, it's the thing that I still see sometimes. Even people who've been trading for years are still trying to kind of answer that question for themselves. And I know it's much simpler than it seems, but it is, one of those barriers to entry. And this, we're going to also like bring this back to what the most common and obvious question that we end up getting from not just our community, but, people who are sort of on the edge of DeFi or on the edge of our platform, deeply interested in this new single synth stock swap that we've launched. How does a synthetic work? How does a synthetic asset work? What is it exactly? Is that something that you guys can speak to sort of help the audience understand just in its nature, what it is, how it works, what are oracles, what are nodes, what are emissions and collateralization, like just the factors and the facets that help to define also distinguish mirror assets from other synthetic assets?
Yeah, sure. So I'll speak a little bit to synthetics in general. So I guess like you can roughly view a synthetic as like any derivative asset that tracks the price of some other asset, right? So it doesn't have to be tracked 1-to-1, but it should be like roughly closely tracking to that asset. And so what this means on the mirror protocol is that we basically look at the underlying stocks. So for example, let's say I'll use mApple again. We'll look at Apple, and we basically want to have our token that tracks this price of mApple be very roughly tied to the price of the underlying Apple stock. So the model that we utilize specifically on the Mirror protocol is basically the maker model. So basically, we make sure that all these new tokens that are issued are collateralized by some sort of asset. So in our case, it's mainly UST. So you can think of Maker, for example, as a user locks up their Ethereum to borrow UST, right?
Okay.
On the Mirror system, the user locks up their UST stablecoin to be able to borrow these mAssets. And so the mAssets derive their values specifically from the underlying collateral. In any case where like the collateral ratio is not maintained, a user can be liquidated by a third-party user. So that, I guess, like saves the solvency of the whole underlying Mirror system.
Okay. And so when we get into things like price pegs and the concept of, these are pegged to real world asset prices, do those break? Do those slip? And if and when that happens, what's the solution?
So the Mirror protocol actually does not like specify that, for example, one Apple is the same price as Apple. It just specifies that it will be very closely tracking the price of an Apple. So it's actually a soft peg on Mirror.
Okay.
But in general, if the price breaks too much or breaks away from the underlying price too much, there exists arbitrage opportunities so that the prices are pushed back into alignment with the underlying asset.
Okay, amazing. And what kind of growth have you guys seen in mAssets since the beginning of this year in terms of users, in terms of growth? I mean, you've got a pretty massive, I think it's like 1.84 billion total locked value in the protocol.
Yeah, so Mirror launched in December, and like you said, has about 1.8 billion in liquidity right now. So obviously there's strong demand for it, and as we continually improve Mirror with the new versions and the community lists more assets, it'll become more appealing to regular users that may not be familiar with DeFi or crypto, and especially kind of the work that you guys are doing too, where you make Mirror more widely available on Ethereum. That helps contribute to the liquidity and overall total value locked inside of Mirror.
And can you create any synth stock you want at this point?
So the community votes to whitelist assets and then register their parameters. So basically anyone can post a proposal to list a specific asset, from a stock to commodity to ETF to a crypto asset, and then the community votes on it. And if it passes a certain threshold, then it gets whitelisted. And then the parameters for, say, over collateralization are registered in a separate vote. So yeah, the community can technically more or less list any kind of asset. It just depends if on the back end, which I think Stanford can talk about more, about the Oracle feeder and then how how that asset would be supported directly on Mirror, so it can track the price closer of the underlying asset.
Interesting. And so the assets that you guys have chosen so far for Mirror Protocol are chosen by the community.
Yeah, exactly. So for instance, briefly we had discussed GameStop before we hopped on. So when all that was happening with GameStop and Wall Street Bets, obviously it was a huge talking point in mainstream media and just on Twitter and the internet in general. So the community proposed to whitelist GameStop as, a meme token and meme stock, and it passed with flying colors. So it got whitelisted, and then AMC followed suit. So really it's at the disposal of the community, and if there's something trending that they want to list, then they can do so.
And what's the time frame between someone proposing it and it generally coming to manifest?
It's about 7 days, right, Stanford?
Yep, that's correct.
And how do you guys plan on expanding the offering going forward? Because I think you have a couple dozen options right now. How do you intend to grow that over time?
Stanford, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, so the price fees that we currently use on Mirror are actually supported by Ben, and we're also partnering with Chainlink, who are doing native integrations on top of Terra. So once they're ready, we'll be also able to use their price fees. So basically what needs to happen is either Chainlink or Ben protocol have to help us with basically feeding in the prices. So what they have to do is go through a technical integration, set up the right price fees, and then we work with both of these teams to bring this data into Mirror. And once this is ready, then the assets are tradable on top of Mirror. And so our plans are definitely to increase a lot of the asset offerings in version 3, and we'll probably be incentivizing, asset pools with different characteristics. So for example, if there's a large trade volume, we may be incentivizing more rewards. So one of the big things we're looking to is also liquidity incentives on top of Mirror.
Amazing.
Win options.
Oh, yeah, stay tuned. That is something that's being currently worked on as well.
And options as well.
Yes. Perhaps not directly on as part of the Mirror protocol, but definitely a separate protocol that will be running on top of Mirror.
That's amazing. It's interesting how hard it is to find those tools that we're so accustomed to in tradition, even on Robinhood and traditional finance. How rare they are in DeFi. It's hard to put rails up on things, and it's hard to set those without going onto a central exchange. So I think that would be super welcomed and quite exciting. So I'd like to talk a little bit about just the Mirror ecosystem, because, Mirror is part of this much larger sort of cosmos, so to speak. And there is some interrelationship between a lot of your products. Can you guys just break down for me what is the Terra ecosystem, Luna, Mirror, Anchor, UST, Terra Swap, Pay with Terra, so that the audience can really understand how robust and dynamic this environment is, and how sophisticated the products are that you guys are putting out, and also just the way that the teams work together and the infrastructure underlying that.
Yeah, so from a more high level, Terra is a Cosmos SDK chain, and it's a public blockchain that uses tendermint consensus like all of the Cosmos chains. And one of the distinct ideas of Terra was that, stable coins can fulfill this currency mandate of cryptocurrencies where the price isn't volatile. But you needed to create stable coins that are scalable and decentralized. So stablecoin competitors like Tether and USDC are all backed custodial one-to-one, but that makes them prone to regulation and they can't scale as effectively. So by baking stablecoins, regional currencies, and the US dollar directly into the Terra protocol as an algorithmic stablecoin, the stablecoin can grow with the growth of the network. So with Mirror and Anchor and Chai, the goal was to establish this trifecta of financial primitives on the network. So Anchor savings, Mirror's investing, and Chai is payments, and you can also integrate any kind of stablecoin payment. And then that can serve as a foundation for all of these ecosystem projects that are currently building on top of Terra to, use that as a baseline for, whatever kind of app they want to make. So from the perspective of the user, the goal is to make stablecoins kind of as the conduit for onboarding a lot of people into crypto where it may be hard. So a lot of the apps in our ecosystem and the community really focuses on outward looking instead of kind of this DeFi native perspective. So some of the apps like Alice Finance that are coming out is like a US based, technically like kind of a banking app on the blockchain. So on the back end, instead of working with traditional financial infrastructure, it works built on Terra, and it integrates, Anchor and the stable coins. But to the end user, it just looks like a typical mobile app that they would use, for banking or Venmo or Cash App or something like that. So that's TFL's prerogative right now, is to really guide the ecosystem's development, give them the kind of resources, connections, or whatever else we can offer to make them successful in what they do.
Amazing. And how would you say, because, we know now that there are several stable coins out there, USDT, USDC being the other two big ones. What distinguishes UST from those two?
So Tether and USDC issued by Circle and Coinbase are custodial stablecoins. So basically, anyone can go to them and reclaim the circulating stablecoin for $1 at a 1-to-1 ratio. So by doing that, as the demand grows for the stablecoins on a network like Ethereum, they grow their reserves so it can back the stablecoin 1-to-1. The limitation with that is that it makes them prone to like centralization for regulatory action. So, for instance, Circle is in the process of becoming a bank in the United States, and they also hold their reserves in assets that they shouldn't be. So it's not just cash, but they're holding like commercial paper, which is very risky. The difference with Terra is that it's an algorithmic stablecoin. So basically, Luna, the native asset of the network, absorbs the short-term volatility of the stablecoin pegs. But as the demand for UST grows, Luna kind of captures that value by burning more Luna to mint UST. So there really is no scalability limit in terms of Terra UST. And then it's also decentralized because it's just minted by the protocol. So we don't control it. Nobody else controls it. So, when you have a currency circulating on public blockchains that, stable coins are a core primitive of most apps, it needs to be censorship resistant and it needs to be scalable too. So that's what UST has done. And, we've seen the traction already with close to like 2.3 billion in outstanding liabilities for UST right now. And after our Columbus 5 update in 2 weeks, a ton of projects that serve as sources of demand for UST will launch on the network too, which is where a lot of algorithmic stablecoins have failed in the past, is that, instead of providing tokenized incentives for liquidity pools, so you should think more about how to bootstrap demand for a stablecoin from the ground up and create an ecosystem of apps that, need the stablecoin and use it in a way that grows the demand over time.
Very well said, and also really interesting to understand the decentralization aspect of this, because I find decentralization sort of means different things to different people, and in terms of how they value it, how they rate it, why it matters to them. So it's really interesting to sort of understand the priority that's given to that with regards to this project, and also unique because the nature of this project, it is so hyper professionalized from what I can understand, and so structured. And do you find that it's straddling that line between true sort of anonymous DeFi projects and something that does mirror more of the traditional banking system?
Yeah, I think Stanford can speak about this too. I think DeFi is at this stage where some of the larger, say, money markets like Aave and Compound, may turn into these hybrid DeFi, CeFi products, where they're kind of a blend of the regulatory structures of wherever they're located and DeFi. So they're sourced from DeFi, but they have these kind of limitations on the front because they're regulated entities that introduces that same kind of custodial risk that DeFi has tried to get away from. But I think that pure DeFi, will always exist. Even if it's a little bit more complicated to use than some of these hybrids. At TFL, like our goal is just to guide the network, and then Do Kwon, our founder, has even said, eventually dissolve once the network doesn't need us anymore. So most Terra is very decentralized in terms of validators running the network and the communities controlling the direction of the applications. And, we prefer to encourage that as much as possible, because even though decentralization kind of exists on a spectrum, there is a certain point where you get to where it becomes censorship resistant, and then you start living up to the actual ethos of, public blockchains that people were so excited about with Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Yeah. And I had listened to a really interesting interview with Do Kwon where he was saying that, he was, the way that he came across this was quite a few years ago, and he was sort of at the border of North Korea and South Korea, and had these sort of revelatory moments of understanding what decentralization meant, what sort of government roles were in terms of people's welfare and financial inclusion and access to money, which I thought was a really interesting way to sort of seed his vision and his passion for this.
Yeah, like that's the goal, of DeFi, right? To offer financial services to, the 4 billion unbanked people with just an internet connection that could do so. So, the infrastructure still has some ways to go before you really start bringing, the masses on board. But there's clearly meaningful progress. And I think, a lot of the more complicated stuff in DeFi that's happening right now is basically a product of, needing to create a base financial system before you can start focusing on the end user.
Right. And I think to be in a place also or it should be like a stage of this where there's so much talent out there and teams and people who have finally kind of switched on to what this is and have the skill set to kind of come into these projects, just like the two of you.
Yeah, if you know any Rust developers, let us know.
Well, Rust developers, that is the SOS call. We'll get it out there.
All right.
What were you guys doing before this? How did you find your way into this world and this particular company?
Stan, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I was actually originally in quantitative finance in New York. So I was a quantitative researcher / trader.
Wow.
Then I got a little bit bored of that area, so then I decided to come back to Asia. And then I actually met Do through a mutual acquaintance from college. And so he sent me out with Do saying like, Do is doing this type of stuff, like want to join. And so my what you would call an interview. It was just like a 15-minute conversation with Do. And Do was like, yeah, sure. Like, why don't you like talk to some of our teams? So I ended up talking with a few of their teams. And so I actually joined on to Terra as on the chai side of things. And
wow.
Naturally, like they saw that I had this kind of background in trading or whatever. And then we ended up moving a little bit more into the Terra side of things and then eventually working on Mirror.
Amazing. And was it sort of a gravitate towards the thing you were most excited about, or was it go where you're needed? Like, how did you sort of migrate to the company?
A little bit of both. So definitely was like, I had quite a bit of a background in research. And I think that's some of the things that we were really focused on before the launch of the actual protocol. We'd look into several things, both in terms of traditional finance as well as decentralized finance. And so that's like where I went. And then that was also something I found really interesting. So I stayed with the team as well as, the general Terra core researcher position.
So you've kind of come full circle from your days in New York as a quantitative trader.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
But like also like, on in the matrix side of it, but in the coolest way.
Yeah, he recently joined Twitter to start shitposting too.
Amazing. That is full circle. Brian, how about yourself? What was your background before this?
So I've worked as like a contractor, more or less for, the last 4 years in crypto, in all different kinds of roles. So seeing, everything that's happened and how far everything's gone with all the weird stuff included. And then I actually loosely followed Terra when they had first come out, as the Cosmos ecosystem was still really young at the time. So I was mostly focused on Ethereum research for Union, doing structured credit risk and kind of their insurance products. And then around Thanksgiving of last year, I read their anchor paper and the white paper again, and then had an interview process with our head of BD, Jeff, and then talked to Joe, and then they brought me on board right before Mirror launched, and it's kind of just been a rocket ship of a ride ever since.
And is it interesting being overseas from them, or does it work seamlessly?
Yeah, so I've been working remote for a while, so I'm pretty used to it. I had never worked, full time with a company outside of the U.S. So mostly just, smaller contract roles with people outside the U.S. But it's been, an awesome experience so far. There's always a ton of stuff going on at Terra, so plenty of stuff to keep busy with. And then we brought on some more U.S. Remote members as well. I think we're close to 10 now. So we kind of are all gonna, meet up at some point in the U.S. Just so we can all, put the face to the name.
I was going to say you must be having a similarly bizarre experience of working with an incredible team of people that you've never actually met in person.
Yeah, and I wanted to go to visit the office in South Korea, but with the COVID restrictions, you had to quarantine for 2 weeks, and then there was some kind of like pass you had to get. So it was kind of a pain, but hopefully those lift soon, and I can travel there pretty easily.
Yeah, amazing. Well, that'll be an amazing journey when it comes to pass. But I just want to say, like, we're so thrilled to have you guys on as partners on this, and to be working in this capacity and sort of really starting to expand the reach of mirrored assets. How does Mirror benefit from having its platform or its products on a platform like WSB?
I think Stanford could speak more to this, but primarily liquidity. So having mAssets on multiple chains has a larger surface for potential users to interact with the protocol, and then decentralization. So multiple front ends on different chains makes it more accessible. People can brand it their own ways or charge their own fees. So it kind of turns into this self-sustainable model where it's open source code that we deployed, but we have no control over it, and now the community and projects like yours kind of take the lead and shape where it goes from here by building their own front ends or helping gain more access and exposure for mirrored assets.
Amazing. Stanford, do you want to add to that?
Sure. So for Mirror, we also have a very, let's say, asset export focused strategy. So basically, Mirror, aims to be able to create these mAssets and then export them to different chains, right? So we want these mAssets to be the basic building blocks of whatever other users are interested in building. So as I mentioned, and as you guys mentioned a little bit earlier, there's going to be an options protocol, right? So we want these option protocols and other team projects to be able to effectively utilize the basic mAssets that have been released on Mirror itself. And so we, rather than us, like the Mirror team or the Terraform Labs team developing all these protocols, we want to encourage other teams to see, oh, like this team has already made basic mAssets. Like, why don't we just naturally build a different product on top of this? And so that's like the type of like thought process that we have internally. And as you've seen, like, and I'm sure Brian has also seen as well in the community, there's been like quite a few new projects that are currently happening within both the Terra space as well as like, a bunch of partnerships across different chains as well.
Yeah. Well, it's so exciting because, I've been familiar with Mirror and trading on Mirror for some time, and it hadn't occurred to me that there was this ability to migrate those assets onto other interfaces and platforms. And, I think it kind of goes without saying that the Wall Street Bets community has, deep roots in the stock market and a lot of passion for the crypto market. And this has been such a sort of like perfectly delivered dish in terms of what sort of aligns with the values of this community. So it was pretty cool and exciting to see this unfold and launch recently. And then I'd love to also understand, because I do follow all the different channels, there's something called Mars Protocol. I don't know what it is. It seems like it's coming soon. Is that something that you guys can speak to?
Yeah, so Mars Protocol is a money market, kind of similar to Compound or Aave on Ethereum, but it's built natively on Terra. And so it's incubated by Delphi Digital, who's a very well-reputed research institution, an investment firm in the industry, who we work closely with. And so money markets, are really important for liquidity and other things within DeFi is kind of like a locus for borrowing and lending. And they have implemented like some pretty cool, like cutting edge changes into their interest rate model, which Stanford I know has more details on. But like a lot of the projects on our ecosystem, since our new mainnet upgrade is happening in about 2 weeks, a lot of them are just waiting for that launch so that they can launch on the main network for the new mainnet upgrade instead of launching on the current version and then having the transition to Columbus 5. So there'll be a lot more details coming around the launch of Columbus 5 from Mars, but it's definitely, internally a project that we're really excited about, and the team is top notch. So definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I feel like I've been intrigued for quite some time now. Very shortly, we're going to bring on Meow Meow with some questions as well. But my last question for you guys is, with this new site launched for Wall Street Bets, what are some things that you might like to share with our community about how we can build and evolve this together, and what would be the optimal scenario for you guys?
I think we can break it into like a technical rundown and then like a community one. So from Stanford could take the technical one, but the community one is like we want to welcome like everybody in Wall Street Bets to the Terra ecosystem and the lunatics who are all really supportive and collaborative. And I think the communities kind of share this internet native degen kind of culture too. So they have like similar personalities and view, especially with the Robinhood dilemma, kind of view the traditional finance world in the same way that many people in DeFi do.
Yeah.
So, we'll acknowledge there are, still barriers in education to get onboarded into DeFi, but, having you guys really post the new front end for Mirror is awesome because, that gives Mirror more exposure to your audience, and they can kind of see how much similarities there are between their community and our community. And so from there, there's really no limit to how much excitement we can generate around Mirror, and it really depends a lot on like how you guys want to position it. But I don't really know kind of how much interest you have individually from some of your community members in Mirror since you guys announced the project only a few weeks ago.
It's been quite tremendous, the response, I would say. Yeah, I think it's been one of the first things that we've launched, or the project's really starting to take shape. As development takes time, and we sort of formed the project last April and went head on into some serious, sort of relentless development cycles, and we still have products and projects that are coming out that haven't launched yet. But this was, I think, a big game changer in terms of the community really understanding, what it's here for and what it has to be invested in and excited about, and to start to see how this is starting to, for lack of a better word, to mirror the experience they might have had in the stock market, and to speak to their interests and, appeal to their interests in that regard. So it's been great.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And then I don't know, Stanford, if you have kind of like a technical direction where you kind of view projects like Wall Street Bets.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to provide new front ends for Mirror, and as well as like any Mirror related services. So there's like a pretty big process of like, for example, you guys seen on Uniswap where they took down certain synthetics from the front end. So being able to give access, like ease of access to all users who are interested in it, is something that we highly value. And then additionally, I guess in terms of technical direction, we're always looking for like more engineers. I'm just trying to make my spiel about engineers. And I think
should do some recruiting for you over here.
Yes, exactly. That would be perfect. But yeah, I think like in general for the crypto space, like the opportunities are always there if you're interested in it. And it seems like, I guess working with you guys as well as working with other partnerships, we've seen like a lot of really talented teams. And then, obviously seeing these teams, we want to get them to join Terra or to get them to join Mirror.
Yeah, so you guys are on a hiring spree. It's going this well. We like this. We'll make sure to put that out to our community if anyone is a Rust developer looking for a role. It sounds really like an amazing place to be, an amazing team to work with. I'm going to invite Meow Meow on now if we have him. Walter, do you know if he's available? No. I think Meow Meow.
All right.
You're on.
Hello, guys. Hi
so
there.
Meow Meow's he's joining us from Russia, and he's just going to come on and add some questions into the mix.
Oh God.
But he does all of our community management, oversees that. Was here from day one, and really knows the kind of DNA of what we're working with over here.
Hello, guys, everyone. Right now it's live from M4 route. I'm in a car right now, as you can see, but I can't miss this podcast, so I'm kind of excited for that. First of all, just want to make an quick announcement, guys. If you have questions, just ask them right now, because we're gonna ask our guests live. And also, I have one question which I received kind of earlier. So, idea is the person wants to get to the stock market, and he asks how easy it is to get his stock tokenized on Mirror protocol. It's just direct question to one of you guys.
Yeah, so the tokenized synthetics on Mirror are mintable by the users themselves by locking up collateral such as UST. And then if the community wants to whitelist new stocks or commodities or whatever asset, they can put it to a vote. So they just put up a proposal, and their community votes on it. So that's why you kind of see like Mirror's asset list is kind of some mainstream like stocks like the FANG stocks, but also some meme stocks, and then some other random assets that have passed the governance vote. So it's really up to the community about how they want to get their stock on there. If they really want to see a stock on Mirror, they can make the proposal and then encourage people to vote for it with like a well-defined argument as to why it should be on there.
Amazing. Thank you. I'm actually gonna send a link to that guy who asked me earlier. All right. We also have a question from Star Trek. I guess it's just a direct question to you guys, and not regarding WSBDApp, but it's still amazing question. Would you hire other language agnostic developers, for example, Java, Colton, Solidity? So, yeah.
Stan?
Yeah, no, we definitely are interested in hiring basically any developer. Obviously, there's some sort of criteria of like how well you do and things like that. But I think the best advice is just to apply. And we have like roles aside from Solidity, or aside from Rust developers as well. Yeah, so please do apply on the Terra website.
Easy. Thank you. And I guess one more question. Let me take. Oh, yeah. Also, so okay. We. All right. There's a question. Let me show it on the screen. Will there be any cross promo done? What does it take to create a new synth and MA?
Yeah, so definitely on the cross promotion, we really want to see the Wall Street Bets community kind of immerse with the lunatics because there's a lot of similarities there. And then, to create a new synth, an mAsset on Mirror, the easiest way is to use one of our on-ramps into UST, which is our stablecoin, and then simply send it to Mirror on the web app, which you can find at mirror.finance. And then once you have it from there, there's a whole documentation set about how Mirror works, how you should interact with it, what you can do with your money there. So if you go to the Terra website too, you can find the ecosystem page that has a list of all the fiat on-ramps. So basically, banking providers that allow you to go from whatever your local currency is, like the US dollar, to stable coins and crypto.
Right. And we have another question. I guess I'm just dropping.
Well, there was actually a question about which it might be completely off the wall and totally irrelevant, but the question is there any way to have prediction markets built into Mirror protocol?
So I don't think prediction markets are within the general, let's say, scope of the Mirror ecosystem / Mirror protocol. But there is actually a team on top of that is building prediction markets on top of Terra. So definitely, look forward to that. A lot of these teams are actually working in stealth, so they'll contact either me or like maybe some other members of the Terra team. But they have not been officially released yet, so definitely look forward to that.
Wow. Okay, so it wasn't so off the wall after all, just in the wrong silo.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're great. Go ahead.
Yeah, and if you do have an idea that you don't see on Terra or you think that nobody's developing on Terra, also talk to me because we'll fund the development for that as well.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the great part is like we don't have to build prediction markets on top of Mirror or Terra ourselves, because with composability, which is like these money Legos of DeFi, they can all interact with each other pretty seamlessly. So if a third-party project builds something interesting like prediction market, like like we can clearly, port assets between the two or have some kind of cross feature with them. So that's one of the great parts about DeFi that kind of goes overlooked if you're a newcomer to the ecosystem and kind of don't understand how fluid all of these applications are working together as one.
And you guys, because I can't leave this one on the table, you guys have a fund that you use to develop and finance new projects and new products that would work within the Terra blockchain. How does that work, and how does one apply for that, and what types of funding are given, or what levels, I should say, of funding are being given out?
Yeah, so we recently announced our Terra Ecosystem Fund, which was a $150 million fundraise from small store investors, longtime investors, and newcomers. The old school lunatics like Michael Arrington and Hashed, and then some larger new venture funds like Lightspeed Ventures all participated in the round. And basically what that does is Terraform Labs will work with projects that have ideas to get to a certain stage, say an MVP, and do vetting and auditing of their code for them. And then we forward them to the ecosystem fund, which uses the amount, whatever that they committed to the fund, to provide a fundraising round for those projects so that they can really get off the ground. So it gives the investors seed stage access to some really promising projects, and then it gives people that want to build on top of Terra the capital, resources, and connections to really make what they're trying to do a reality.
That's amazing. Do you feel like enough people know about this?
I hope so, but if you don't, you should go to our Medium and check it out because it's pretty cool. We've only just started it recently, so we just have a few projects in the pipeline, but yeah, it's an amazing opportunity, and in crypto, these are pretty abundant, so it's worth exploring if you're interested in building something.
I mean, it sounds incredible. And would you say that Terra, in that regard, do you feel like you guys are in competition with other blockchains in terms of, I don't know if we would call it market share when it's decentralized, but in terms of prominence, in terms of endurance and all of those things? Or do you feel like all of these separate blockchains can coexist happily and not necessarily have to be concerned with the idea of competition?
Yeah, so Terra is kind of weird in that regard in terms of, our position is that the multi-chain world is the future. Obviously, being in the Cosmos, once IBC goes live, we can connect to any chain and exchange value and messages. And we also have some bridges to Solana and Ethereum already. So, having that super fluid collateral and liquidity of assets across chains is really important for like the net benefit of the whole industry. But Terra's position is weird in that we don't necessarily compete with other chains because our primary focus is, the growth of UST, which captures value for Luna holders. So as long as we can export our stablecoin to, all these different chains and have it as a base asset in AMM pools or different apps on those networks, and it becomes, a dominant stablecoin, or just, gets into the range where USDC and Tether and the others are, then the amount of value creation through seigniorage for the Terra ecosystem and the stakers and the Luna holders is huge. So in that regard, we don't necessarily compete with other blockchains in terms of like, oh, we're faster than this one. We have like a primary export UST. And our objective is to increase the demand for UST through various means, whether that's applications on our own network or exporting it across cross-chain bridges to networks like Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, Solana, and other Cosmos chains.
Amazing. So it really is it is really interchain and also agnostic in that regard. And you sort of benefit from the success of all of these different chains.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. It's a good strategy, I would say. I think we might have time for one more question or comment. Meow Meow, do you have anything else before we wrap up with these guys? We might have lost Meow Meow to a Russian taxi. All right, I know you guys have to move on to the next thing. It's a busy company. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if there's anything else that you'd like to share or say with our community, please feel free. But I just want to say, it's a pleasure having you on. We're so thrilled about this partnership. Feel really lucky to be working with you guys. And I'm sure the dialogue will continue.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. I know, internally we're really excited about what you guys are doing too. And if you're listening and you're interested in Mirror or Terra or generally anything crypto, feel free to reach out or kind of look at our documentation and other resources that we have for people because, it can be a life-changing opportunity, and it has been for many people.
Yeah, amazing. Stanford, anything you'd like to add?
I guess not too much more, but thanks for having me and Brian as well. And
It's such a pleasure.
Yeah, and definitely last spiel, definitely apply, even if you're not a dev. So yeah, looking forward to continuously working with the Wall Street Bets team as well.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks so much, guys. We'll sign you off now.
Thanks. Have a good one.